Okay, welcome to Abnormal Psychology. Here is what we would have gone through if we weren't in quarantine today. We would have gone through our personality disorders. Okay, so our personality disorders, these tend to be chronic, meaning that they're long lasting, usually last for years. Basically, you've got a history from early adulthood. You want to be a little bit careful and sensitive about diagnosing someone with a personality disorder because you're saying that the disorder really affects many aspects of their lives. Okay. So, if you remember from personality, from Introduction to Psychology, personality is how you are in most situations. Okay, so it's how you are in most situations. So, how you are in your relationship, in your job, with a variety of people. Okay, so it's going to reflect how you are in most situations. Okay, and so a personality disorder is going to affect every aspect of life. So, same as what we said before, right? It's going to affect your relationships, your job, your relationships with your children, your relationships with your spouse and significant others, parents, friends. So, this affects every aspect of your life. The people who are diagnosed with personality disorders, they might have distress and they might not. Sometimes someone with a personality disorder will come in and the problem is everybody else, right? They don't see it as I have a phobia or I have a fear or I'm an angry person. It's why is everyone around me an idiot? Or why don't my relationships ever work? Why does everyone hate me at my job? So they don't really have the distress. They think that everything is right. They have the distress in that other people are complaining about them, but they're distressed mostly that there's a problem with other people, right? They don't see themselves as the factor that needs to be changed in all these situations. They don't see themselves as the common element in all of these situations that they're complaining about. So that's a brief overview of personality disorders. There are 10 of them. We're going to go with the first today is going to be borderline personality disorder. So borderline personality disorder, you need 5 or more of the following criteria. These are DSM-5 criteria, or in other words, DSM-5 symptoms. DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the 5th edition. Okay, it's reprinted in most abnormal psychology textbooks as well. So, with our first criteria, and I'm sorry it's smudged, the first criteria is frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. So, frantic efforts. The key word is going to be frantic efforts. So, frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. Now, nobody likes abandonment. It's a frightening experience. But the key word again is frantic. And also another word to look at is imagined. So if this person separates from you in a store, they're going to start yelling and screaming, "Where did you go?" Even though it's a simple separation in a store, they somehow imagine that you've abandoned them. They imagine that you've abandoned them for good. Other examples include, if someone's a frantic effort to avoid abandonment is, I'm going to hurt myself if you don't come back, right? So if you abandon me. Or even if you're just, hanging out for a couple of for a couple of hours or more than that. Let's say you've hung out for the whole day and you just want to leave. The person might not want you to leave. They'll think of that as abandonment. And so they might hide your keys. They might put up a big fight so that you don't leave. They might stand in front of your car. They might lie down in front of your car. Okay, so this in the first symptom is already quite striking, the behaviors. Number 2, if you're experiencing number 1, then the second symptom is going to be unstable and intense relationships. So unstable and intense relationships. Alternating between idealization and devaluation. So again, straight from the DSM, unstable and intense relationships alternating between idealization and devaluation. So that's just a fancy way of saying like a very intense, dramatic relationship that's going between love and hate. So the person might love, love, love you. You're the best friend I ever had. And they will be, very attractive to you, and they will be there for you when nobody else will be there. They will answer your call at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they will talk to you even though they were sleeping. So, and in their hearts, they do really love you and they do really value you. But then let's say you might want to leave, or you might want to slow things down, or you might just want to have some space for yourself. And then they might devalue you, right? Or they see that you're being closer to someone else. Then they might devalue, or they might hate you, or be extremely angry with you, or feel like you're betraying them. So they will devalue you, and all that love is going to turn into hate. So, in 2 symptoms, you've already got a pretty striking experience here. Okay, number 3 is unstable sense of self. Okay, so they've got an unstable sense of self. Okay, so this I've seen as, the person might not know what they're attracted to, or they don't really have any attraction. They're just attracted to anybody who likes them, right? It doesn't really matter. As long as a person likes them, they'll have an intense relationship with that person. Okay. Also, you might see this as somebody who switches careers a lot or switches majors a lot. Now, it's normal for people to switch careers and switch majors a certain number of times in life, but they might switch very, very frequently, and they might switch to things that are completely unrelated to each other. So first it's art, and then it's biology, and then it's Spanish, and then it's business. It's just things that don't usually naturally flow one into another. Okay, and that might be from their unstable sense of self, their unstable sense of their own interests and their own strengths. There's also sometimes a pattern with an unstable sense of self of them sort of self-sabotaging. So they might drop out of college, or they might drop out of high school right before graduation, or they almost finish a program and then they stop, or they're almost going to get promoted, or they're doing well and then they quit, or they're in a relationship that's really, really working out and then they break up with the person. Okay, so it's this instability, okay, of also like, what will it mean to finish something? Maybe they're just more comfortable being the way they are right now. They don't want that to change, right? And just the stability of it all might even be frightening because they're accustomed to instability. Whoops, just want to say. Another example of unstable sense of self is because they don't know who they are, they might just try to copy you, right? So they copy your hairstyle, they copy the way you dress, they copy the people that you like. They want to go out with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, right? So they don't have that sense of who they are, so they just follow you completely. All right, number 4 is impulsivity in 2 or more. That's my own little shorthand, 2 plus. Impulsivity in 2 or more areas that are self-damaging. So impulsivity in 2 or more areas that are self-damaging. So impulsivity means they act without thinking. They just act very quickly. And then it can really hurt them. So 2 or more areas, I'm just going to give you a list of some of these areas. It could be spending, right? So they just spend and spend and spend and spend, and that could definitely be self-damaging. They max out their credit cards. They're in debt completely. They can't find any more funding. They can't find any more credit. And so their life is spent trying to pay off this debt that they've accrued. Sex is also another area where they just impulsively, they sleep with people, they get involved with people, and they're not really thinking about it. They're not thinking of consequences or possible ways they could be hurt. Substance abuse is another. There have been many studies on substance abuse and borderline personality disorder. So there's a comorbidity, which means they run together sometimes. Another example would be reckless driving, again with the emotional aspect of it, the emotional driving, careless driving. Okay, so reckless driving. There's also binge eating, and we covered bulimia. So binge eating, and there is some overlap also between borderline personality disorder and binge eating. So again, acting without thinking, again using food to quell their emotions. Okay, number 5 is recurrent suicidal behavior or self-mutilating behavior. Okay, so recurrent suicidal behavior or self-mutilating behavior. So someone threatening, I'm going to kill myself. Right? So as a clinician, you have to be very, very careful. If you were to become a psychologist, you would receive additional training on how to assess suicidal behavior. Okay? Or they might have self-damaging behavior or self-mutilating behavior, for example, cutting. And some people report that they cut because it makes them feel better, or because they think, because it makes them feel a rush. And some have theorized that it's because of the painkillers, right? So the endogenous morphine that your body releases, or the endorphins that your body releases, might make you feel better when you cut. So some people think that that's why they cut, because it releases endorphins. Number 6 is affective instability. Affective in psychology means emotional. So affect is emotion. So affective instability is emotional instability. So this could be shown as intense mood swings, right? So 1 minute you're fine, and then the next minute you're extremely angry at somebody. They're also very highly reactive, right? So things happen and they react extremely angrily. This is, they're not calm, right? They're feeling very intense anger. So again, we've got a pretty intense symptom picture here. Number 7 is chronic feelings of emptiness. Right? So chronic feelings of emptiness. And this is also why they're scared of abandonment. They're afraid to be alone. If someone is afraid to be alone, it's I was taught that it was because you're afraid of your own thoughts. Right? So if you're feeling I'm worthless, I'm nobody without somebody else, I'm empty, I'm nothing, then you're not going to be alone. Being alone is terrifying. People who love to be alone love their own thoughts. They love to be lost in their own thoughts, and they love to maybe create, during that time alone. But people with this disorder feel extremely empty. So if you have 10,000 thoughts a day, as they say, and those thoughts are I'm nothing, I'm empty, the world is nothing, I want this to end, I have nobody, then this can be intense. Being alone or being abandoned can be an extremely intense situation. We've also gotten, and I'm saying intense a lot because it's showing up a lot, inappropriate, intense anger. So inappropriate, intense anger. So somebody is extremely angry. So, and you've seen this, right? But I would say it goes even beyond some of the anger that most of us have seen. So an example would be, would you kill someone's pet because the pet got more attention, or because the person that you wanted showed more attention to their pet? Okay, now that's an extreme example, but that is an example. So I just want to show you, some of the more extreme stuff so that you have a feeling for how this can get, how severe this can get. Number 9 is transient stress-related paranoid ideation. So again, straight from the DSM. Transient stress-related paranoid ideation or severe dissociative symptoms. Okay, so transient stress-related paranoid ideation or severe dissociative symptoms. So transient meaning it comes and it goes. Stress-related is it's going to appear during times of stress. Paranoid is they think things are, people are coming after them, or someone is spying on them, or things, refer to them when they don't. Right? So paranoid ideations, just they're having thoughts that are paranoid. Dissociative symptoms mean it's almost like an out-of-body experience. You're completely detached from your body. So this actually is the symptom that is related to why the disorder is called borderline. It's because they're on the borderline of being in reality and not being in reality. So once you're into the severe paranoia, the severe dissociative symptoms, then you're sort of going into psychotic symptoms, right? So you're on the borderline of psychotic and not psychotic. A couple of notes before we close, right? So this is, borderline personality disorder is an intense personality disorder. Please, as difficult it is to be in a relationship with someone who has borderline personality disorder, I have found that people who have it, they're going through extreme pain, and they're going through the chaos and the drama at a level that people who do not have it don't really understand how intense it feels for them. It used to be more common in women, used to be more frequent in women, but more recent studies have shown that it's about equal in men and women now. Okay, so it used to be more common in women, but now it's evening out, where It's there's more men who have it now. 50% do not meet criteria 10 years later. Okay, so 50% do not meet criteria 10 years later. So someone might just have a very difficult time in their 20s and their 30s, maybe their 40s, and then something happens, 10 years later, that it just evens out. Okay? Not evens out, but things stabilize, and then they no longer meet criteria. So they might be in a very, very stable relationship. They might reach a certain point in their job that helps to stabilize them. And also they just might have 10 years of experience and maturity that helps them to remain more calm and to establish more stability. Lastly, there are reports of early physical or sexual abuse. Okay, so there are reports of early physical or sexual abuse. So you can imagine that if somebody has a very close relationship as a child, and it's a loving relationship, but it's also abusive relationship, either physically or sexually, that they might in turn start thinking that that's the way that relationships are, and so they apply that kind of instability to their relationships later on. Not all people do that, and there's a lot of people who are resilient. A lot of people who break cycles of abuse. But one theory and a finding is that some people who have been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder do have that history of early physical or sexual abuse. Okay, again, so that is it for this week. Please email me if you have any questions, and otherwise I look forward to seeing you next time.